Stop cramming default access modifiers because there is no place of cramming in the programming world. Every single line, every semicolon or dot in your code, there is a meaning behind that. So stop cramming the things, try to understand the concepts. And did you ever thought whenever you go for an interview and interviewer asks about the default access modifier of interface, class or enum, why they ask? They are not interested in that, do you remember that or not? They are interested in, do you really understand the idea behind that? Do you really understand the concept? Because once you understand the concept, you don't need to remember, you don't need to cram anything. You will understand concept once, then you will be fully expert in that area. With this session today, I'm going to show you the way we don't need to remember the things and how we can understand these concepts very easily. Okay. So to understand this concept, let's understand the structure of this class, right? The class that we write in our code. Let's understand that structure first. So let's focus on this diagram that I have created here. So what I'm saying here, the first layer on that structure is called namespace. Then within the namespace, second layer is called class, right? And in the class, there are other layers called constructor, destructor is there, property is there, variables is there, and methods is there. And same in the programming world. If you see, the first layer is namespace, then there is a class, and then there is a constructor, there is a destructor, there is a variable, there is a property, there is a method, right? So same thing here. Now, once you understand this structure, you don't need to remember the default access modifier of anything. So let me go to the other diagram. So let's focus on now default modifiers, right? So here, I'm just talking about the class, not about the interface and not about the enum. So there is a reason behind that. There is other diagram that I have created here. So let's try to understand this, right? So on the root level, let's focus on the root level first, because this is very important. Once you understand this, you will understand the other concepts also. So on the root level, which is class level, right? So there are two types of lock only available. One is public, second is internal, right? So only two access modifier is allowed on the root level, public and internal. So to understand this concept, there are two things we need to understand. That there are two levels under default modifiers that Microsoft has designed. One is root level, second is inner level. And when I say root level, what it means? It means this level, this class level, right? Why I'm not considering namespace? Because namespace don't care about any modifiers. That is why this namespace is out of this game, right? And even the interesting thing is your program will still work if there is no namespace. You see here, even if you comment, your compiler will still compile, right? So that is why this namespace is out of game, this inner level, right? This inner level means whatever inside this boundary, this class boundary, right? Whether it's property, variable, constructor, destructor, or methods, right? So these are the only things that class can have. So I'm talking about that inner level. Now, let's go back to the diagram, not here. So let's go back to the diagram because of no access modifier needed for spaces, right? So let's uncomment this code. Now let's focus on this. First level is this. This is the root level, this level that I'm talking, root level. Now, second level, so even if you go to the code and if you try to specify, any other, let's say private, you will see Microsoft will start crying that, we can't allow private, and it says private, protected internal, or private protected. None of these are allowed on the root level. So only either it could be public, right? Or it could be internal, right? So you see, both are allowed. Now, question is, what is the default access modifier of this root level, which is class here? So there are only two locks that we just talked are available, either public or internal. Now, to understand this concept, that what would be the default, think about your house. There are two locks available, which is very strong, that no thief, no one able to break that lock, right? then there is a lock which is weak, anyone can come and they will just break that and they will able to enter into your house. So what lock you will choose? For sure the lock which is more secure, more strong, right? So over here there is something called internal, right? Internal is the most strong, most secure lock as compared to public, right? So what Microsoft says that this is my house, this is my class, right? And I will restrict people access this class, right? And what locks I can put? Either I can put public or internal, and internal is the most safest lock, most strong lock, right? So that is the reason the default access modifier over the root level would be internal, right? And why, why I'm saying that internal is the most secure lock? Because once you say public has access of everything, whether in this project, like see here, within this project, because this class belongs to this project, this class library, right? So if it is internal, that means every class, everything, every file that belongs to this, only they can access. But if it is public, anyone can access it, right? Let's make it public and let's go to the other project here, which is this class library, and this is other project. So I will go to test class and let's try to access this now. So I will say access modifier class and create object and say new, and this is the object. You will see it should be, it is not allowed due to protection level because the constructor. Let's comment this constructor for now, and I will talk about constructor a little later. So commenting this code, let's comment this for now. Now you will see it is allowed. You see the error is gone, you are able to access. So that is why internal is the most secure default access modifier. Now you will see it started crying. It says inaccessible due to its protection level. So now we understand the concept that there were only two locks available on the root level, public or internal. So what is the default access modifier? That is internal. Now root level is not only for class. Even if you go for an interface, even here that is by default internal, right? So if I can show you, if I try to copy this and try to implement within this project, because this interface belong to this assembly, this project only, right? So that means if it is internal by default, I can access it anywhere. So this class also belong to the same assembly, so I'm going to implement. You see, I'm able to implement. Here you see, right? All the methods, everything is here. Now let's undo that part. Okay. Now if I try to access same over the other class, which is test class in a different class library, is it going to allow me or not? Let's try to do that. If I say, hey, implement this, and it says that is inaccessible due to its protection level, right? So that means whether it's a class or interface, by default the lock would be internal, the access modifier would be internal because it is more secure and strong. Okay, now same for enum as well. Okay, so now by default, if nothing is mentioned, enum would be internal on the root level, right? So that hence proved anything on the root level, whether it's class, interface, enum, all of these things would be internal, right? Okay, now let's jump to inner level. What would be the default access modifier of inner levels? Now when I talk about inner level, we are dividing this again into two parts. One is class part, second is enum and interface, because there is some exceptions in enum and interface. That's why we are dividing into different parts. Okay, now let's talk about class first. On the class level, we have all levels of lock available: public lock, internal, protected, protected internal, and private. So over here, right, so what would you choose? What is the most secure lock? How you are avoiding people to enter into your house? That would be your private lock, right? Because this is the most secure lock that people won't be able to access. So that means inside class, what are the things that can store? In the class, it could be constructor, right? So let's uncomment this code now. It could be constructor, it could be your property, it could be your variable, method, or destructor. Well, destructor don't have any access modifier, right? So that is also interesting again. So even if you try to make it private, you will see destructor will start crying that private is not a valid for this item, and it's not that private. Even if you try to make it public, you won't be able to, you again will see the same error. The modifier public is not valid for this item. So destructor is also out of this game. So in case this is also tricky question when interviewer will try to ask you that do you really understand the concept or do you just cramming the things. They will ask, hey, what is the default access modifier of destructor? Now you will get in trap of that interviewer. So destructor don't have any default access modifier because no one can call it directly, right? It managed by itself, so no default access modifier. Okay, but constructor, property, field, methods, everything has a default access modifier. So let's remove public from here. So if I remove, now if I don't mention anything, they would be private, right? So what all I have to do to show you, if I make this public, right, and now I try to access this, let's try to access this in a test class library, right? So this is since public, so what I will do, let's remove this as well. Okay, now let's uncomment this code. We should see some error. Here you go. It says access modifier class is inaccessible due to its protection level. And do you know why? Though the class was public, still it says the same thing because of constructor. Because if you don't specify any modifier, it would be private. So let's make this public and let's make that happy. Now it should be happy. Here you go, right? So hence proof. Now how about the property? So property is also a private, right? And the reason is because it is on the inner level. So inner level would have everything, the most secure log that is private. So if you try to access that, you see there is nothing in the IntelliSense. And if you try to enforce this property, and you will see there is some error. Let's put it into something, otherwise it would be other error. So if you see here, it says inaccessible due to its protection level, right? But if I make it public, it should be happy. You see, here you go, yeah, man, right? Okay, same for variable as well. I don't think I need to explain, but I will still explain that thing. So let's go ahead and let's try to access variable, and you see the same error due to its protection level, right? So hence proved anything which is on the inner level, that would be private by default. We still left with a method. Let's go with the method again. So let's copy paste here and let's try to access that method, and we should start facing error. It's a void, so that is why it is shouting that you can't assign. But if you see, it says inaccessible due to its protection level, right? So that means, but if you make it public, it should be happy. Here you go. Hey, come on. Oh yeah, here you go, right? So anything except destructor. Remember, destructor don't have an access modifier. Anything, whether it's constructor, property, variable, method, all of those would be private by default because that is the most secure lock that these members have. Okay, now let's jump to the other part which I said which is exceptional, right? Now here the concepts will totally fail because I was saying anything on the internal level that would be private because that is the most secure log. But in case of enum and interface, that concepts failed, and it says anything comes under enum or interface that would be public. The door is completely open. Anyone can come into that house or anyone can use it whatever they wanted to use, right? So first let's prove that, and then I will talk about why that happens. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go to interface now. So you see, interface, we know that on the root level it would be internal, but if I but the inside it is supporting method and property, right? So what will happen with this? So let's just copy this and go to the other access modifier class here, and what we will do here, let's try to implement. So here you go. So what I'm saying, whatever is coming here, that is public. Okay, so let's prove that first. Let's implement this and you will see, here you go. You see this property, test property that is coming from interface, it is public, right? And then this method which is void test method, that is also public. Here you go. Where is that? Here you go, right? So that is also public. Now the question is, why is that? why there is a two rule Microsoft has created. One is for class, second is for interface. Why they don't make everything same? That would be easy to understand the concept. So well, there is a reason behind that. So if you notice, interface, what is the use of interface? The inner members, methods, property, they don't have actually anything, right? Interface don't store any logic within itself. It is like empty box. Now let's say in your house, empty boxes in your house, right? Now you don't care about those empty boxes. You say, these are useless for me. Anyone can come and they can take this empty box and do whatever they wanted to do, right? So similar thing, since they don't have actually logic, they don't have body, right? So that is why these things are public, because there is no use otherwise if it will become private or internal. That is the main reason that these are public. Now similar things with enums also. So again, enum on the top level, on the root level would be internal. But over here, all of these things are again public because there is no logic, right? It just store the key pair value, right? There is no actual business logic. So what it says, these things are useless if no one is going to use it. What I will do if I make it private or something, right? Even if you try to make it public, let's say public, it won't allow you, right? So let's see, it should start. Yeah, you see the name Sunday does not exist in the current context, so that is the wrong syntax. So these are the things. Now if you again go to the diagram, that is why enum and interfaces were public, because they don't actually have the bodies. Okay, now what, how about the abstract class? Because if we go over abstract class, let's go to abstract class that I have created here. So even abstract method don't have body. So how about that? What is the default access modifier of the abstract method? So if you look at the error message now, it says that virtual or abstract member cannot be private. So that means the default access modifier is for sure again private, because this is the inner level. But C# compiler refused to accept that. It says, don't make me private, make me something else, maybe public, right? So, and the reason is again, same, the empty body. Otherwise, there is no use. So make me public. But the tricky question is if you explain interviewer or any person that, because interface, enum, they don't have body. That is why, the inner methods and properties are public, but they will trap you here. Then tell me, how about the abstract methods? They don't have the body. Are they also the public? The answer is no, they are private, but compiler is not going to accept that private. So they're public, right? Either public, which is acceptable to some other class, or protected, right? So these things are only allowed in the case of abstract method, right? So I hope now you are not going to forget this concept, and you don't need to remember all the time. You just have to understand this concept. Now your life would be easy. Okay guys, that's all for today's video. I will see you in the next video.